Hello, my name is Simon Powers. I am the creator of Classical Guitar Corner, which is one of the largest classical guitar schools online anywhere in the world. In this lesson, I want to walk you through an etude by Matteo Carcassi. This etude is seemingly simple. It has a very simple and beautiful melody. It's a homophonic texture there, which means melody and accompaniment, so it's almost like a singer and a piano playing at the same time. Polyphonic, of course, is two voices, two or more voices, and poly just means many. And monophonic is where it's just one line, as if you were singing just a plain melody by itself. So homophonic is where we have the melody sitting on top or perhaps below, and that simple chordal accompaniment throughout. So I'm going to take you through 5 main points about this piece that I think will really give you an insight in how we can use this as a study to practice our skills, and how we can play this piece with some real depth, because it's a beautiful piece to study. When I first came across this etude by Carcassi in his set of 25 wonderful studies, I played it simply like this. I played it in first position, it's the most obvious choice, and I also played the accompaniment. You know, there are rests marked in there, but you know, you just let it ring over. Isn't that what the guitar does? But then I spent some time with it, and I actually ended up playing it up in this position here, and also changing around the accompaniment. And what I found is this little gem of a piece really takes on a completely different character, and for my money is much more pleasurable to play like this. And on we go. So what I love about that is, first of all, if we take the time to re-finger the passage so that we get to keep the melody on the second string, and we don't have to worry about it being on the first string and using the open string sometimes, we get a much... Well, first of all, we get a lot more control of the melody. We can add vibrato, and by keeping it on the same string instead of changing between second and first string or even using open strings, the ability to keep that tone quality consistent in the melody is there, as opposed to before, where we're dealing with this. This always seems to happen with everybody, especially if we're not paying attention. Those open strings can be a lot brighter than this. So if we really want to take care of that melody and think like a singer and make that connect all the way through, as legato as possible, as singing as possible, I think choosing to finger it up here is a great choice. Oh, that's, see? It really speaks. So I have included 2 editions of this piece in my level 3 book. One with the most obvious and accessible fingering down in first position, and one where it's refingered the entire piece to play in the upper positions. Now, sure, it's going to take a little bit more time and effort to find the notes and play it up there. And in fact, some of the fingering choices can be a bit more challenging. However, the payoff musically, I think, is worth the effort. And we get this singing line that stays in the upper positions where we get to use vibrato and stays connected. So let me just play the whole first phrase for you. So I think, well, let me now, in contrast, now play you the one in first position. Oops. So you can see, and in fact, I did end up there on the second string, so you get a different tone quality by the end of that phrase than at the beginning. The other part that happens with one set of fingering compared to the other is that in first position you're relying on a barre technique for a lot of the passages. So here we have this barre. Now, what I like to do with this piece is really be aware of where the composer, Carcassi, has put in rests. So often as guitarists I think we ignore rests a lot, but they're not put in there arbitrarily. If the composer wanted the notes to ring, they probably would have told us. So the difference is between this and this. So the accompaniment in one case is ringing, and in the other one, I think it's a marked difference, and if we had the opportunity to have a string quartet playing that part, or maybe not a string quartet, maybe just a cello and a viola, we would never say, oh, just ring on, just keep playing the notes. No, we'd ask them to have that punctuation that the articulation provides. The way we get that, or the way I like to do it, is in the left hand. So we can stop the strings easy enough with the right hand, but that has a very sharp cutting sound. So what I do like to do is lift with the left hand. So we could go 1 and 2, oops, sorry, 1 and 2 and that kind of lifting with the left hand. I often refer to left hand staccato like that as well. Whereas right hand staccato sounds like this. They are two kind of different sounds. I think of one as being almost spherical in the way the sound cuts off, like it tapers off a little bit more, and the other one like squares, like bricks. They both have their time and place. But for this particular piece, I think that more pom sound, pom, 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 is more appropriate for the piece. So in order to do that comfortably all the way through these passages, I think the upper positions again give us that advantage because we have no barres. Lift. Compared to here. Because I could lift here, but I still have the barre holding down that C, or here as well, the C barre. You can't actually lift that barre because it's needed for the melody note as well. So we start to delve into the pros and cons of different types of fingerings, and I just think this piece is a wonderful example of the two different worlds a choice in fingering can make. So I encourage you to take a blank score, and there is a blank score version in the repertoire book, but to take any blank version of this piece and go through the fingering yourself, because making those choices and decisions will be really enlightening, and it will be your own piece. You get to make your own choices, and when you come up to the tricky bits, you can decide, shall I play it for technical ease or should I do it for musical consistency? And those issues are going to come up again and again and again in more advanced repertoire, and this is a great place to learn how to do it and what kind of results you'll get from changing the fingering. One of the more common questions I get about right hand technique is to do with alternation. When we're starting out learning our classical guitar technique, it's often enforced the fact that we have to alternate very regularly between the two fingers that we're using, normally I and M, but it could be between M and A or I and A, any combination really. But there start to arise some exceptions to this when we get into the intermediate and advanced repertoire, and this might be a good example of one of those. The reason we don't want to the reason we don't want to repeat fingers is that, one, it builds up tension in the hand over time. It causes a lot of tension here. You can even feel that if you try and play, and it encourages bouncing in the hand, which is not great for technique either. The other thing is that it's just not practical for any kind of speed. You can get to about that speed, but you couldn't really fluidly play something a bit more rapid like those notes. So for tension purposes and for fluidity and speed, alternation is a really good habit to have in your technique. Now this piece is slow, So we're not going to run into any issues in terms of speed. And there is other things happening in the hand in terms of the accompaniment. So we have some space in between these notes. So I think it's a good etude to experiment with just playing the melody with the same right hand finger the whole way through to complete an entire phrase. This means you can work on consistency of tone and control in just that one finger. So with the M finger, and the A finger, for example. Oops. And the fact that you have repeats in this etude means that perhaps the first phrase, that 8 measures I just played, you could play all with the M finger, and then on the repeat, all with the A finger. Repeating using the same finger in the right hand is a technique that I definitely employ in passages I want to take care of the tone and be very aware of it. For instance, in the beginning of the Bach fugue, I play the first 4 notes with the same finger in the right hand. That way I'm very much in control of the tone consistency, and after that I engage my alternation in the right hand. When taken a tempo, which is andante, andante simply means at a walking pace, the melody is quite slow and drawn out, and it's very beautiful and it interacts with the accompaniment. But if we speed it up, we get a bit of a bird's eye view of what's going on. So let's play this much faster, just the melody. So just playing that up at maybe 4 times the speed, we get a pretty good overview of how simple the melody is. And what it really has a lot of are repeated notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That figure of 4 repeated notes followed by a downward step runs through the whole piece and has some variations along the way. So what do we do with 4 notes that are exactly the same? Well, you wouldn't stand up in front of a crowd of people you were trying to convince and say, friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. You wouldn't use the same kind of inflection and articulation there because it's a bit boring and it doesn't capture the ear. And the same goes for these notes. We wouldn't play it like this. However, if we give it some push towards that 4th note and crescendo through to it and then decrescendo off to the last note, then again, then push again, and taper off. That way we're pushing through those 4 notes and we're moving them. None of those 4 notes are identical. And now with the accompaniment, you can see that every time those repeated notes come up, I'm doing something slightly different. Even then, along with the crescendos, I was changing the tone a little bit by moving my hand around. So that is yet another aspect to keep in mind when working on this etude, making sure that the repeated notes are not all the same. Finally, I'd like to deal with a musical concept that we've dealt with already in all of the repertoire leading up to this, but it's one that is too often neglected in actual practice or playing of music. And that is a suspension and resolution. So, as I mentioned, we had these 4 notes. 1, 2, 3, oops, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, going from 4 to 5, that is a tension in the harmony. We've got these notes, and then it resolves to this. You can even hear it. And what's happened is we've had this F in the top here that's prepared, then it's suspended over the next chord. That's where we get that tense sound, like it needs to go somewhere before it can relax, and then we get the resolution. So this happens again and again. We have preparation, suspension, resolution. Preparation, suspension, resolution. Preparation, suspension, resolution. And then we get variations on this as we go all the way through. And Carcassi plays with this tension and resolution. And to be honest, that is the building block of classical music, Western classical music. Tension and resolution. That's the ebb and flow as we go through pieces. So what I recommend is to play that suspended note at one volume, one dynamic. Usually here we're pushing through, so let's say that's a mezzo forte, and then pull back quite dramatically on the resolution note, so it sounds like this. If you were to sing this kind of melody, I'm going to make you suffer through a little bit of my singing here. You would not sing it like this. The instinct for us is to taper off that melody and go da 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 dum, ya da 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 dum. Always just to come back a little bit in terms of dynamic on that last note. But if we let our hands do the thinking for us, which is a common occurrence, it can easily be played like this. It's not the worst thing in the world. It's very clear, that kind of melodic playing, but it just doesn't have any contour, and the expressive effect of tension to resolution is lost. So, and also I would recommend in the early stages practicing this kind of phrasing, this suspension and resolution, to exaggerate that resolution. So it's even softer than you might think. Because in my experience as a teacher, I ask people to play this suspension resolution, and often it's just, there's a small difference. It is slightly softer, but just not enough to catch the listener's ear. And that's who we're playing it for. We're playing it for someone to sing to them and to make melodic sense to them. So be aware that this suspension resolution happens in all kinds of music, but throughout this piece in particular, and that is the final point that I wanted to focus on in this lesson. So I hope you enjoyed this lesson on Carcassi's Etude, and if you are new to Classical Guitar Corner and you would like to find out more, you can just click on the link below and you'll get a free video course as part of signing up to the newsletter. I'm very much in contact with all of the subscribers with Classical Guitar Corner, and it's a great way to introduce you to the site. If you are already part of the newsletter, maybe you'd like to consider becoming a member, where we have many, many lessons like this, also courses on theory, musicianship, notation and sight reading, repertoire, and there are duos and masterclasses as well. So thank you for your time, and I'll see you at Classical Guitar Corner.